Do you ever have major frustrations with another generation and wonder why it is so difficult to see eye to eye and work together effectively? Well, if you've ever felt that, whether it was maybe your parents' generation or even the generation below you, tune in because this is going to be insightful. You're going to hear some personal stories and takeaways that can change the way you respond to other perspectives. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's rock and talk. Welcome back, my friends, to Fulfillment Therapy. Today, we're going to talk about how to navigate things when generations collide. And I just had an experience that has kind of made my mind reel a little bit. And I'm trying to figure out, even still, how much to share because I'm always trying to be respectful of different people. But sometimes it is helpful to be more vulnerable. So maybe I will share a little bit more while, again, trying to be very respectful of other people's stories. Whenever I tell a story, I want you to remember that I just have one side of the story. And when I'm in counseling, every time I hear one side, I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. And then you hear the other side and you're like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. So everybody has their narrative, their story to tell. And it's easy to be compassionate when you hear both sides. Well, you're only hearing my side. So keep that in mind. And I think I am pretty good at being open-minded because of my job, my profession, all of those things. But before we go into that, I just want to, again, tell you to go check out fulfillmenttherapy.org. Check out our courses. And not only that, but every single podcast episode we do has a blog article that goes with it. So if you want some of those tools, if you want to see what it's like broken down and put in more digestible, easy takeaways, then check out our blog on fulfillmenttherapy.org as well. And you can also sign up for our email campaigns and be the first to hear about things as they come out, as well as any savings, any discounts on those courses, any of those things, including the upcoming podcasts and so much more. So check that out. Now, let's go back to what I was talking about, when generations collide. Well, I recently had a conversation with a parent, one of our parents. We have several. And this person was going to be watching our kids. Now, we don't leave all that often, but celebrating our 20-year anniversary, we needed to reach out to people to get assistance because we were going to be gone for 10 days, and we don't typically do that. Now, it's very normal to feel a little bit anxious. For any of you listeners out there, I'm sure you have felt that. Like, oh, I don't even know who I would ask to watch my kids, and feel safe and secure knowing that their needs are tended to and not just their physical needs, but like, yes, I don't want them to eat candy all the time. I don't want them to be up really late. I want them to feel loved and nurtured, and I don't want them to be nervous or overwhelmed when I'm gone. Those types of things. Like, we all feel that as parents when we leave, right? it's our job as parents to protect them, to keep them safe, and to meet all of their needs, including emotional and otherwise. So it's hard to walk away and to turn that to somebody else. Well, I've been thinking about generational patterns since my last episode with Kenzie Evans, and I think we had a slightly different perspective on things, which is totally fine and wonderful because I love listening to other perspectives. And the more you go back and forth, the more you can see the value in other perspectives. She's talking about how it's important to almost like call people out, and even if it makes them uncomfortable, to do so. And there's sometimes that I agree with that. And I also think it's very important to always attempt, when possible, to be respectful and loving. And I don't think she would disagree with that by any means. Like, always try to do that. But it's difficult when each generation has such a different perspective and values things. Now, this can be different in every single country. For example, if there's a war or something like that, like I know after the Depression, it was very highly valued to be frugal, to be very hardworking. But the reverse side of that, like the vice side of those virtues, is there is often a scarcity mindset or an inability to let loose and have fun and play. Now, this is somewhat generalized. Obviously, this is not everybody, and there might be times when that is not exactly accurate or certain places that didn't feel that as keenly. But that is one example. Now, every generation, it's a little bit different based on what's going on politically, based on what's going on in the area, even religiously, or even with like mental health perspectives or whatever that might be. And I think we often get in this trap of thinking, well, it's going to be the same the next generation. Well, no, there's so many shifts for each generation. And the question is, what are we going to do about that? And I noticed that when I had this conversation with this parent that I was starting to get triggered. I was starting to get frustrated. I was trying to be very respectful and go directly to that person and talk to them about concerns and just giving them a heads up about what things look like when we are home and what things are important to my kids, what can help them feel safe and secure, and it to like be an easy transition and all of these things. I really tried to be loving and respectful. And I'm sure some of my anxiousness leaked through a little bit. Because I don't even like the word anxiousness. It makes it seem like it's so heightened. But that nervousness, maybe a little bit of letting someone else take the reins of my little chicks as if I'm like the mother hen. Like, they're very vulnerable. And while they're very resilient in many ways, I want to keep them safe. I want to make sure that they thrive. And we've had some experiences in the past where I don't feel like they were watched out for in always healthy ways. Anyway, so I was having that conversation and the response wasn't quite what I was looking for. This is why I'm trying to navigate it respectfully. They very much believe that children should be very respectful of adults, but not necessarily the same way. Like, children do not necessarily deserve respect. Like, they should just listen to their elders. Now, if I said it in just that way, I don't think they would agree with that statement. But reading in between the lines, that seems to be what I'm hearing and seeing. And it's the opinion of my generation that respect is two ways, that it's earned, and that there can be more collaboration. And I think that's a harder part between older generations. There's not a lot of collaboration between younger generations and older generations. You simply are obedient to your parents, no questions asked, or any elders. Now, that is not how we raise our kids. I think there's something sometimes very valuable in that, but I think there's sometimes something very unhealthy in that. Because it is, and actually Kenzie talked about this one of our last episodes. I'm not really sure where it's going to air, but I just recently did that episode with her. And it is important to me, and it was Kenzie as well, to teach your kids to stand up for themselves, to advocate for themselves, to be assertive, to be able to share what it is that they need and even what they want in a loving, respectful way. Well, I think a lot of times older generations don't know what to do with that because it can come across to them as disrespectful because they're not used to that assertiveness from youth. And that can be very triggering. And even me sometimes, because I didn't grow up with that, I sometimes forget that I'm teaching my kids those things. So sometimes when they're talking to me, it seems mouthy. And I do have to remind them to have a respectful tone and a conversation and approach it at the right time. But it is important to me that they do feel like it's a safe place to talk about things. Now, another thing is very triggering sometimes for that generation, for older generations, when kids show feelings, when they show frustration or sadness or anger, and they want to shut that down really quickly. And even our generation or other generations, sometimes people get, depending on their background, get very frustrated and triggered if they grew up a certain way where that was not allowed. But overall, our culture right now, middle to younger culture, is it's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay to have those thoughts. And it's important to process them and feel them. And I reminded this parent that it's important that my kids, while I'm gone, know that they can be sad and frustrated and angry, and that's okay. Now, can they ruin it for everyone else and throw tantrums and be terrible? No, like within parameters for sure. But it's not wrong for them to have feelings. And again, when everybody sits down and talks through these things, we recognize, well, yes, we want similar things. We just go about it in different ways. And now I, for a moment or a few moments, was triggered and tempted to say, no, my way is the only right way. Like, I wasn't thinking that, but there was a part of it that was like on my high horse thinking, oh, my generation is so much wiser than this other generation. But that's not true. It's just different. So how do we collaborate with other generations that see the world through different perspectives because of their experiences? There were so many more wars during their upbringing and their grandparents' upbringing, and they had a different way of approaching things. And there's going to be so many things that come up from our own children. And I reminded this parent that this is normal, the things that we're doing. And the most important thing that we can do is talk directly to each other, not everyone else, about our frustrations, and be honest and authentic and work through these issues. And remember, this is part of the human experience. This is okay. And I also said, this has been a great conversation because as I've talked about these things with my kids, about their nervousness or their feelings, their apprehension, it's brought up other things that I can do to improve as a parent. And I guarantee you, when I am a grandparent, my children are still, no matter how great I'm trying to be as a parent, I'm not always going to nail it. I definitely don't nail it now. We are going to have these same conversations with our kids because they will be nervous, even if it's just one little aspect, but about something. They'll be apprehensive about having us watch their kids because we see things in a different way. We raise them in a different way, and their differing worldview makes it so that they will likely raise their kids in ways that we don't understand, and we're going to think our way is better. And if I learned anything from this experience, it's to be humble and to collaborate and to remember that no one generation is necessarily right. It's just different. And we can talk through it and remember that there's always going to be some sort of conflict or difference. And yet we can talk through it. We can rise above it and remember that we're all different, and that's okay. Like maybe my kids are going to learn the lessons that they need to from somebody very different and have a better idea between multiple generations, what's going to work best for them as parents. And it's probably not going to be purely what I'm doing either. Actually, I can guarantee you it won't be. I hope this helped you, and I hope you remember to put aside your self-righteousness and that we are all trying. It's okay if we see the world differently, but what are we going to do about it? My prayer and my hope is that you will be the bigger person. You will lead with love, and you will go to the source and you will remember to normalize these things that are happening instead of living in fear and just refusing to let anyone else ever engage with your kids or watch your kids, because they do need those different experiences. And I'm telling myself this right now too, because I haven't left yet and I'm still feeling a little apprehensive. Thanks for listening, my friends. I hope you have a beautiful week, and stay tuned in just a few days for our next episode. And check out fulfillmenttherapy.org for that personal growth course, that parenting course, and our marriage course, as well as our business course, Find Your Focus, that will help you in those first steps on starting an online business and a podcast. Until next time. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you, no matter what your house or your hair looks like. I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.